All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Shim, and welcome to my review, overview, impressions on Forza Motorsport 8. I've been really excited for this game for a long time, and for the past few days, I've been able to log about 15 hours into the game, and I feel like I'm just at the point now where I can provide my thoughts on all aspects of this game. I really want to talk about everything. And that's why I'm bringing you this kind of review today where I'm going to go through the UI, the home page here, and I'm going to try to go through everything and give my thoughts on Motorsport 8 and everything that it has to offer. I've actually recorded this video a few times as a voiceover, and I was going to pair that with footage that I got at the beginning of my time with the game. But the more and more I got into the game and more I played, I was finding new things to talk about every single time, and it got to the point where it felt more appropriate for me to just go through all of the settings live and give you a gauge of the game's performance and the game's quality that way. So that is what I'm going to do today, starting with the settings. Now, might be a little bit boring getting into the settings, but this has to do with the force feedback, the assists within the game, as well as the performance of the game. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the performance itself. If we go over to the video settings here, currently I'm running this game on a Ryzen 5700X CPU and an RTX 3060 Ti GPU. And I'm able to use the dynamic rendering high using a 380 3840 by 2160 monitor. I'm using a TV screen to play the game. I do not have DLSS on, and most of my settings are set to higher settings in terms of the detail and scene quality. So I'm using some moderately high settings for the game, and I've been very successful in those settings. Everything has felt really good. I haven't had any issues in terms of performance so far within the game. Maybe a few hiccups here and there, but nothing that's been game breaking. I do know that this game is a little bit heavy in the CPU category, especially when you're playing offline with AI. So, just a fair warning, if you do have an older CPU or maybe a CPU that's not as powerful, you might struggle with loading all of the AI in single player, but you shouldn't have nearly as much trouble with online racing. That being said, like I said, in rain, shine, day or night, I haven't had any issues with my current settings, and there are a lot of great videos online that you can use to help adjust your graphic settings on PC to make the game run as well as you possibly can. Next thing I want to go into is the overall physics of the game, especially when it comes to the driving assists and the force feedback for a wheel. All of my time with this game has been spent using a wheel and pedals, and currently, right now, I'm using the ABS on for braking, simulation steering, and I do actually use sport traction control. That's something I tried just yesterday, and I gotta say, it really helps me out a lot. I would like to see a little bit more customization with the options in terms of driving assist, especially with ABS and traction control. And I think for anyone coming into the game, use what you feel comfortable with. Don't feel like you need to have all the assists off when you start playing this game. I've been racing for quite a while now, and I still need the ABS on, and the traction control on Sport really does help, especially with some of the higher power rear-wheel drive cars. Um, Current settings feel really good. I really like the addition in the traction control of the Sport option, which is more of a middle ground between full traction control on and traction control off. In most cars, I don't feel like I need it at all, but when I do have sport traction control, I don't feel like it is getting in the way of my driving, and it's just assisting when I really need it the most. So for me, sport traction control has been a really great addition to the game. Although I, again, would love to see a little bit more variation in terms of the traction control settings that the game gives. The same definitely goes for the braking assist as well. Right now, there's only fully assisted, partially assisted, ABS on, and ABS off. I feel like you cannot play this game without ABS on. Braking is really sensitive in a lot of these cars, and you will lock your brakes if you're not careful. Um, I've basically needed it in every single series that I've used so far. Otherwise, I'm 100% going to be locking the brakes. This is especially where I'd like to see a bit more leeway in terms of the options that they give us. I'd love to see some sport ABS on middle ground because right now it just seems a little bit ridiculous. We don't need full simulation, like every car has the ABS and traction control mapped like it would be in real life, but it would just be nice to have a little bit more middle ground, kind of like what GT7 does, and gives you a little bit of a slider. It gives you more options in terms of the ABS and traction control that you can have. Just a thought, I would love to see that happen. Another assist that I wanted to bring up, and it might be actually within the gameplay section, is the proximity arrows. This I'll be able to talk more about when we get into the race, but especially for someone like me who drives in cockpit camera and who um, doesn't have the ability to see around my car in, let's say, third person mode when I'm using a controller, the proximity arrows are just not enough for me to understand where all the cars are around me. Um, there needs to be a better radar system within this game, especially for us wheel and pedals users when we're in the cockpit camera. We'll talk more about track limits and the nitty gritty details about that proximity arrows once we get into a race, but I just want to highlight it now to let everyone know that the proximity arrows could probably use an improvement or a complete overhaul, adding more of a radar into the game. Audio settings, really nothing to write home about. You can change all of the settings here. You can change the tire sounds, you can change engine sounds, opponent engine sounds, the environmental sounds. I just lowered the volume completely across the board. It was really loud as a baseline, but tune as you would like. Lastly, I would like to talk about the input settings for the steering wheel in the advanced inputs here. Now, I mentioned in my preview video that I was expecting the force feedback of this game to be pretty terrible out of the box, and I was right. The force feedback when you first boot up this game on a wheel is kinda terrible. That being said, once you change your settings up, it feels great. This game handles amazingly on a wheel, in my opinion. The physics and the forces that you feel in the wheel feel great. They feel like they actually are telling me how the car is performing. And the only issue is that you have to make a lot of changes to the settings. There's a really great video that overtake.gg made on their YouTube channel that goes through all of these settings and gives a great baseline or starting point as to where you should put these settings when you first start the game. You can see those settings right here on my screen. A lot of them are pretty much taken straight from that video and adjusted, within the ranges given there. The only thing that they didn't really talk about too much is the road feel scale. I definitely think that that needs to be increased for most people, especially for me on a G920 wheel and pedals. Um, that helps you feel bumps in the curbs and on the road. I increased that a bunch so that I just got a little bit more feel on the road. So that's the only one call out I would say within the force feedback settings that you should probably watch out for that they didn't really mention in that video. Overall, there's a lot of great settings in here, and you can get the wheel to feel really good. I don't use a controller, but the one thing I have heard people talk about is that the steering axis dead zones for the controller are a little bit ridiculous and a little bit too high, or maybe a little bit, you know, not tuned correctly. So for you, just make sure that you go in and update these settings so you can be as precise as possible when you're using a controller with this game. I know a lot of people are bringing the steering axis dead zone down to, let's say, like 5 or 0. And if you start feeling drift in your sticks, then increasing it from there. But it's just a little bit too much right out of the box. So overall, the settings, a lot of things that you can change and update, a lot of customization. I don't really have any issues with what is given to me in terms of customization. I do wish, in terms of the driving assist, there was a little bit more customization. And I wish that the feel of the wheel was better out of the box, but you can change a lot of that, and I haven't had too many issues. It hasn't detracted from my experience in this game. I'm going to skip the store right now in my review and go straight to media. And with the photo gallery and the replay gallery, really no issues with the photo gallery itself. I've taken a few pictures. I just took this one picture of a race the other day at the Oval Eagle Rock Speedway. Was doing more of like a NASCAR type race on the oval. Just got a grid lineup video here or photo here. A lot of options within the photo settings. I haven't tweaked them too much. Don't really have any major comments on the photo system. Um, I know that with a lot of people, they do a lot of editing with their video, with their photos, and they can make the photos look really, really great. So you can already see a few photos here coming from people, pics from turn 10. So photo mode is going to be really popular. I think there's going to be some great photos here to grab and to use and to see throughout the game. The game looks pretty great in my opinion. So photo mode I think is going to be very popular. The one issue, and this might be a very personal issue for me, is the replay gallery. I don't have any replays right now because every time that I've tried to grab a replay, it has not worked at all. Um, my personal replays, the race just doesn't play at all. All the cars just stay on the grid. I don't know what the issue is, if it's on my end or what. I have tried to load other people's race replays and it's worked just fine. So I'm not sure what the issue is with my download or with my game, but the replay is not working for me personally. And I don't know if there's anyone else out there that has that issue, but just want to call it out. For me, replay function has not worked at all. And for me, I want to make content in this game. I want to use that replay function so I can see more of my car. I can get different camera angles, but sadly, I just can't do that right now because the replay function is completely broken for me. So a bit disappointing there, but just a call out. I think it may just be me, but who knows? Maybe it's a known issue and they'll be able to fix it in the future. Moving on to driver, I was a little bit disappointed in this tab right here because the driver setting, the only thing that it allows me to do is change my body type and change my race suit. Uh, Gotta say, a little bit disappointing. I was hoping to see some stats within the driver section here. That's one issue that I have with the game so far is that for my online performance, I only have my safety rating and my driver rating, skill rating to show for it. And even then, that's not easily accessible. Like I can't see it right away when I go into, multiplayer racing. I have to go over to the tab to see that. So I would love to see some driver stats within the driver tab here, or maybe have a separate tab that gives driver stats, just so that I can see, how many race wins I've had, how many races I've done total. Have they been more in spec series? Have they been more with open spec series? I would love to see that information somewhere within the game because right now I don't really see that anywhere. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong places, but I've looked through all of my tabs and I have not been able to see it so far. So, call out there, just wish they had a little bit more statistics for someone like me who wants to see how I'm doing. Moving into the cars, I think the car selection, they say there's over 500 cars within the game, And I think that's a really decent selection of cars. The only issue is, and let's see if I can find the issue here. These are actually just my cars. Sometimes the car's livery doesn't work completely, like this Oldsmobile Trans Am Cutlass. Right now it's just using the default livery, but if I actually go into the car here and load it up, you can see I actually do have a design on that car, even though it does not show within my cars section. Um, I'll go over to like this Honda Civic, the Honda World Racing Civic TC car. I have a Miku livery on that, a Good Smile Racing Miku livery, and that is looking just fine. Same with this Honda S2000. That has my own personal livery on it that I've gotten for the car. My Acura is broken. That I have a livery on it and go into the car. Takes a while for the load. Now you can see the livery for the Acura. So sometimes it shows the car's livery, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know if it's just a glitch within the game or something. Probably something that can get fixed. Not a huge issue, but just something to call out. Um, this sort of screen or menu to go through cars is pretty typical for the Forza series. I maybe would like to see more cars, in the column instead of just two, but that's more of a personal preference. Moving into the cars that you can buy, though, if I let's go to the Cadillacs here. This is where I want to call out issues with the number of cars that the game has. They say there's over 500 cars, but if you look here, we have the 2023 Cadillac, the Racing V Series. It's basically their LMP car. It's their performance, endurance car. They are three different versions of this car, and each of them counts towards the total car count in the game. Um, I'm not sure if that really counts in my book. There's only a few circumstances like this where this is the case, but just to call out that even though they say there are over 500 cars, there are some repeats here and there. Sometimes you'll have repeats of the same car, just one is a racing spec and one is the street spec, like the Acura NSX here. We have the GT3 spec, and then we also have the track spec here, or sorry, the road spec, just regular Acura NSX within the game as well. Again, that one might be a little bit more reasonable because, yes, they are completely different cars. They handle completely different. I totally understand that, but with especially those Cadillacs, it doesn't really make sense. Um, Also, one call out I want to make within the car list right now is I feel like there's some really notable omissions within the car list, especially within the GT3 lineup of cars. Right now, we have this M8 GTE car, and then we have a GTL M, which is the M6. Um, right now, I would have maybe expected the BMW M4 GT3 to be added to the game because we do have the M4 2021 competition coupe in the game, but we don't have the GT3 spec. I feel like that's a pretty notable omission. I would love to see that. Also, if we go to McLaren here, we have a McLaren. Uh, we have a McLaren 720S Spider. We have a McLaren. I think there's a McLaren 650 in here as well. Anyway, we have a bunch of McLarens within the game, but we don't have a McLaren GT3 car. I think that's really disappointing to see. McLaren is very popular within the GT3 series, especially if you go to like Assetto Corsa Competizione. I would have loved to see a McLaren GT3 car within the game. I think that also is the case with Mercedes AMG. We have the Black Series, we have the Mercedes GT, but we do not have a GT3 spec Mercedes. I feel like that's almost more egregious. The Mercedes GT3 car is incredibly popular, and it really doesn't make sense that it's not in the game already. Sure, they could be holding out until, having it come later as live service content, but I feel like it's just a strange omission to have at game launch. I would have loved to see them have it at the start. I don't know. That's just me personally. I don't do a lot of designing and painting of cars personally, but I think the design and paint system works really well, similar to how it's worked in previous games as well as the Horizon games. One thing that I think is a really great fix from Horizon 5 is that when you go into a car, let's say, let's grab a car here, this Audi GT3. Let's go into it and let's go to design and paint. We want to find a design for this car in Forza Forza Horizon, if I went to go search here at the bottom, this would all come back and search any car, make, any car model, and then you could change the keywords. Now it automatically populates the make and model with the car that you have currently selected, or currently the car that you're like currently driving. I think that is a really great change. It really helps, you know, alleviate any issues. Some people might get frustrated because they're trying to search for a livery for their car and they don't know that they're searching the wrong parameters. I think it's really nice that they finally just autofill to be searching the right parameters. Um, since it's so early in the game's life cycle, we don't have a ton of liveries just yet for the car. Um, so that will just come with time. We'll see more liveries for the cars. And I think the rendering of the car livery here is a little bit disappointing as well. Very pixelated, not very clear and concise. I would like to see them sharpen that up a little bit. But in terms of the functionality of it, I can still see the livery. I can still get a good idea of what it looks like. And the overall using of the design system works really, really well. Last but not least, the upgrading system. Now, this is going to be a very divisive topic for a lot of people. I already know that a lot of people do not like the upgrade system currently within the game. I personally don't mind the current upgrade system. Forza Motorsport 8 has changed the way that we upgrade cars, and each car is given a car level, and that's the level that's like basically indicates how much time we've had in the car. So this 2013 Dodge Viper, it's one of the Spotlight Series open racing cars currently. I'm level 17 with the car, and what level 17 gets me is I can use a certain amount of car points to make upgrades on the car. And if I go into the car, there are certain things that are locked off to me because I have not unlocked them yet. I have not had enough time in the car to unlock them. A lot of people are disappointed with this because a lot of people were really excited to just start upgrading cars right from the get-go. This is one of the things that Forza prided itself with in the past is that you could take any car and you could start tuning it right from the get-go. You could tune it a whole bunch, you could change everything, and it would just cost credits. Well, it doesn't cost credits now, it costs car points, and your car level dictates how many performance upgrades that you have access to, and it also dictates how many performance upgrades you can put onto the car. So, in the case of my Dodge Viper here, I have 2,950 car points I can use. I've used all of those. My current PI rating is 752, and I've had to make some compromises. Maybe I'd like to put a rear wing and a front bumper to add some aero elements to the car. I can't do that because I don't have enough car points to have that unlocked. So I'm keeping it stock because I think that there are other upgrades that are more important. Let's say a transmission upgrade or using a little bit larger tire width or tire compound. I personally think this is really great. I think it forces you to make educated decisions with how you are going to upgrade your car. And yes, for the Spotlight series, maybe you can't upgrade the car to the max, PI level right away, but it forces you to drive the car and learn the car and upgrade it on the way. I think it works well in both multiplayer and single player. It definitely thrives in single player, but I don't think it is a negative to the multiplayer either. I think you can still have really great battles, even if your car level, your like PI level for your car is a little bit lower than the cars around you. I think it still provides good racing in those series. I know not everyone's going to agree with me there, but you know, I think it really is down to personal preference. I personally like it. I know other people who have played the game and reviewed the game disagree with that, but I think it's really going to be down to the individual person what they think about this new car upgrade system. I could see them reverting the change in the like in the future with different updates, but as it stands right now, I really like it. I think it works perfect within the single player story where you take a car stock from the get-go and you upgrade it as you go. I really love that method of upgrading cars. I think it works really great. I think again, it's just down to personal preference. Now that we have all of that information out of the way, we can really get to the nitty-gritty of the game. The career mode, the racing, the multiplayer, all of that. We can finally start discussing what I think is the most important part of the game, and I think you'll agree too. First thing I want to just mention is that Rivals is back with Motorsport 8, and I think they do a great job as they always do within the Rivals mode. Rivals has been a staple of Forza for quite a long time now in the Horizon games and in the Motorsport games. I think they knock it out of the park here. They have featured Rivals modes that are going on every week. Currently, they have a spotlight on the Subaru BRZ. It's a really fun one at Virginia International Raceway. They have one using the new Corvette E-Ray at the Maple Valley, which is one of the new to Forza tracks. They also do have the VIP exclusive rival events. Doesn't really interest me. I'd rather go up against everyone else, but this is there for anyone who is interested. I really don't have any negatives to say though about the rivals. I like how it automatically picks a new rival for you once you've beaten your old one. I think the track and car combinations have been really fun so far. Just kind of really remain to be seen as the game goes on what different rivals events we're going to have moving forward. I don't think they're going to mess this up though. Rivals is pretty set in stone at this point, and I really don't think that's a bad thing. I think they've nailed the time trial aspect of Rivals. Next, I'm going to talk about the career mode and the Builders Cups. The introduction to the game is doing a Builders Cup itself. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit worried about this introduction because the way the cars felt, but the more and more I raced in the game and got used to the physics, I must say it starts to grow on you. You start to understand the game a lot better, and the dedicated race cars do feel really great in this game. And the Builders Cup starts to feel a lot better too as you get more high power uh, cars as you go. The single player Builders Cup with the base game has multiple different tours that you can do, and each tour has a bunch of different events that you can participate in as well. So we have the Modern Tour, Track Specials, and the Enthusiast Tour, the Power Tour, Legacy Tour, and the Open Class Tour. And I really think there's a lot of great variety here in terms of the cars. Like I mentioned with the upgrading, what you do in these series is you go into the series and you have a car that you take from scratch and you upgrade that as you go on. So here in the modern tour that I just picked up, looks like it's a bunch of little sports cars like the Renault, the Impreza. We got the Volkswagen Golf here. We got a Mini Cooper. Basically a bunch of touring cars, but just the road versions of the touring cars here. And what we can do is just pick one of these cars right off the start, pick a car that we've already owned, or maybe a car that we want to buy and start from scratch. And then every single time we just keep building that on that car. We level up that car and we can make more performance increases. And I think the really cool aspect about this too is that while you're upgrading your car, so are the AI. So it really forces you to learn the upgrade system and make upgrades that are going to make the most impact on the car. And it may be that you'll unlock a bunch of upgrades at the start, and once you unlock a very important upgrade, you might take all of those other upgrades off and put on the more important one because it costs more car points. I think that risk and reward, that balancing of the upgrade system, I think works really well for the single player portion of this game. And a really great addition too is the track day or the track tour and the tours of motorsports area here, the section. This is where we'll have weekly single player track builders cups that we can do every single week. So the first one we have here is the track day tour. Where I took a Honda S2000 and built that up as we went. I thought that was honestly really great. Next week we'll have the built to race, the track exotics, the prototype power, and then we'll get a reward at the end. I think this is a really great addition to the game, having single player content, offline, non multiplayer race content to help supplement the Builders Cup that comes with the game. I think that's a really great addition. Now, last but definitely not least, I would like to talk about the featured multiplayer. This is what most people are going to be most excited for, and I really want to talk about this a ton because I have a lot of really good things to say, and I have a lot of things that I think could be improvements to this section as well. First of all, the qualifier series I think is a great introduction to this game. Using the spec Honda Civic touring car is a great introduction to the race cars in this game. Like I had mentioned, the Builders Cup was my first experience with the driving in this game, and I was a bit worried because the cars didn't handle great. And I wasn't sure if that was me personally or if it was just the fact that it was a road car, it wasn't really meant for the track. Well, it was that latter option. It was a road car. It wasn't meant for the track. When you start using this Honda Civic um, with a racing spec on it, oh my goodness, it just feels so good. Everyone is in the same car in this series, and all three of my qualifier series races, you have to do three before you can do any other event. All three of them were absolutely fantastic races. I ended up being able to win two of them, and I got a podium in the other one. Um, was an absolute blast, and I think the track selection is really great. Having Hakone Club Circuit, the short circuit for Laguna Seca, and then Grand Oak. I think that was just a great choice of tracks. Had some really great racing within the game. Had a ton of fun with this qualifier series, and really made the difference for me when it came to the handling and physics in this game because once I was able to feel a race car in this game, I was immediately excited for more. They felt so nimble, they felt powerful, they were able to handle like a dream. It was just an absolute blast. Um, and then after that, I was able to start going into the spec events and the open events, and I was able to get a driver rating. Now, I guess I'll first talk about the driver rating. I think this needs to be more front and center. They have it locked behind this tab on the far right now, and I just think that's not good enough. They need to have this in the top right hand portion of the screen, and it needs to be always visible. And there needs to be a very noticeable, you know, graphics that shows when you improve your safety rating, you decrease your safety, improve your skill, decrease the skill. I'd love to see that be more dynamic because right now it takes me having to go to this tab to find out how my safety rating and skill rating is being affected after my races. And I just feel like they could do a way better job and put this information on the top of my screen somewhere. There's tons of space there to show this information off. I just don't know why they don't do it already. But again, it's here. You can see it. I just wish it was more prevalent. Moving into the different series, though, that we have. First, the spec events. We have the GTX Sports Car Series, which is the weekly series that's going on. A lot of fun. These cars are beasts. They're a little hard to control, but Really fun so far. Had a really fun race at Le Mans at the 24-hour circuit. That was a lot of fun. Um, I think this game really thrives in the touring car series. The touring cars in this game feel incredible. They handle amazing. They are super nimble, and I just feel like the best racing comes from this series. I would love to see a little bit longer races, maybe having some, strategy changes, or like some strategy to think about. Right now, it's kind of you just set the tire and you let it go for the whole race. You don't have to make a pit stop. I'd like to maybe see a little bit longer races, but honestly, this is maybe the best series in the game right now, for just close wheel to wheel action. Uh, these cars feel, like I said, fantastic in this game, and I really think this is the shining example of what racing can be in this game. And then last thing in the spec events is the Forza GT series. And I think this is what most people are going to be excited for within this game. And I think they did a really good job with it, but there's a lot I would love to see improved. Um, First of all, like I mentioned in the car section, I'd love to see more options for the GT3 cars. If we go into the cars selection screen right now, a lot of the cars are older. Like all the cars I have currently are 2018 GT3 spec cars, but as you can see, we have the V12, which is from 2017. We have the 2014 Bentley, the BMWs, like I mentioned. We don't have the new M4. We have the 2020 C8R Corvette, which is probably the newest car I think that we have in this series. We have a Dodge Viper GTS. We don't have any new Ferraris. We don't have the new 296. We have a very interesting choice here of adding the Ford Falcon, the Holden from the Australian supercars. I don't really think those fit in the GT series. That's just me personally. I think they need to take these out and have their own special, maybe weekly series for the Australian V8 supercars, but they definitely don't belong in the GT series, in my opinion. We have a lot of GTE cars, which makes sense. I get that, but yeah, this just doesn't really make sense to me. We have a GT4 spec car within what I would consider a GT3 spec series. Uh, Interesting choice, but kind of fits a little bit more. I can understand this one more. Uh, they have the Essenza Lamborghini instead of the Lamborghini Huracan. Again, very interesting choice. I maybe would have expected the Huracan and not the Essenza. That's just me personally again. We have the Ultima race car. Again, just doesn't fit in this series, in my opinion. And then we have a bunch of Porsches. None of the new Porsches, but that's kind of par for the course at this point. I really would like to see this series fleshed out a little bit more, as well as tightened up in terms of the offerings that we see. Um, this Nissan Altima and the two Australian supercars just don't fit, in my opinion, and need to have their own series. Um, Again, that's just me personally, but I think most people would agree with me. Going away from the spec events though to the open series, I actually haven't done anything in the R class racing, but we have the Spotlight series on the Dodge Viper 2013. I really like this. I like this a lot more than I thought I would. This Spotlight series has you buying this car or having this car stock and upgrading it as you go. Yes, you're going to see discrepancies in PI level between everyone as they, get time in the car, but I had a underspec Dodge Viper last night in some races, and I was able to, get podiums, get wins in the car. I think the Dodge Viper was honestly a really good choice because the car handles super well and is really fun to drive. And there's some really great circuit options here with Spa-Francorchamps. We got the national circuit for Circuit de Catalunya, Barcelona. Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, sorry. We have the Road America East route. There's also Lime Rock Park with the South Chicane and Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I think these are all really fun choices for races. I've been racing Lime Rock a lot, and that's just an excellent track for this car. I'm not going to lie, I'm having a ton of fun with those races. But I'm having a lot more fun in these open events than I thought I would. And I can actually see myself maybe coming back more to these in the future and maybe giving some tips and tricks to upgrade cars for people who are maybe new to this system. So I'm really impressed with the options that they have currently. I'm really happy with the overall multiplayer experience. I love that there is a safety rating. I love that there is a skill rating. I think it's done fairly well, but we'll get into that a little bit more as we get into showing some race footage here in just a bit. But really, yeah, that's all I have to say about the multiplayer kind of experience so far. But let's get into one of these events. Let's do this touring car event, or actually, let's do this Spotlight Series event, and I'll show you a bit of what you can expect when in the multiplayer. And this really goes for the single player as well. All right, so here we are in the Spotlight Series in the menu. Now, we are currently in a lobby, and we can go out for practice and qualifying. Before the race itself, when the servers go live for that race event, everyone can go in and practice to their heart's content, learning the track, getting more experience with the car, seeing how their upgrades perform. You can do that all at the start of the race. Now, for qualifying, everyone has 3 laps to qualify with their car. Regardless of how long the circuit is, everyone has those 3 laps, and that's all of the opportunities that they have to set a lap for their starting grid position in the race. I think for some tracks that might be a little bit long, especially like the really long ones like the Le Mans circuit, but you just have to be sure to time your practice session correctly so that you make sure you can get all of your opportunities in. I know I've been burned by that before, not getting enough opportunities for laps, and then I ended up having a really bad grid position because I qualified too late into the session. Now, here we have the event details. It'll show how much, what time of day, what the weather is going to be. I wish this weather was a little bit more clear, but you do see the weather here. You get to see your race length, how many qualifying laps you have, and a little bit of other information. One thing that I would like to see in this screen is indications whether pit stops are mandatory or not. In the GT3 series, the GT series, and in the current Spotlight series with the GTX cars, everyone will need to make a singular pit stop, but that isn't really highlighted anywhere in the UI. I really wish they would have that more front and center just to give a good indication of whether we need to make a pit stop, and if we've made the pit stop, that is clear and that the game recognizes that we've made it. Um, yeah, just a little bit silly. I think that information needs to be more clear. Right now it isn't, and I think that's a little bit disappointing. Next, we have the drivers list here. Um, yes, this does a decent job of showing all the information. It shows the car class of the people, which is more important here in the open series than it is in a spec series. Everyone's cars are kind of balanced in the spec series. One thing I really would like to see here, though, is the safety rating and driver rating of all of these drivers. Right now, I really have no indication as to how good these drivers are. The only thing I can see is their qualifying time, and that's my only gauge of like how good these drivers are. Sure, we get the driver level, but that only really indicates how much time they've spent in the game, and it doesn't really indicate pace in the game. So I think they really need to update that soon. I would love to see the safety rating to know if the drivers around me are clean, and I'd love to see their skill rating to see how good these drivers really are. And when talking about skill rating as well, I think at the start of the game it's maybe a little bit iffy so far. because everyone is just getting hands on with the game. I think it's going to take a little bit time for the skill rating to iron itself out and that spread to really get seen. But right now, I have no indication of how well I do every race or, you know, how good other drivers are. So I just would really love to see that information because I'd like to see how much my safety rating and my driver rating is improving after every race. When it comes to the tuning screen here, um, in the spec series, I would love to see maybe a performance upgrade screen here so I can mix and match some of those performance upgrades. Right now, I have to do all my performance upgrades back at the main menu for this multiplayer series, which is a little bit clunky because after every race I'm gaining quite a few levels with these cars, and I'm going to want to go and do upgrades. It wouldn't be nice to just have an upgrade screen here that I could use to make it a little bit easier on myself. Um, in the single player series, in the single player like story races and tours, after every race you have the option to go and make upgrades. It would be nice to maybe have that kind of system as well. Maybe is a little bit harder to do with the multiplayer races always being on a rolling schedule, but I think there's something that could be done there to make it a little bit easier to access. We can make any tuning upgrades that we have access to. If we've got the upgrade to make the tuning change, we can make those tuning changes here. We can change all of these different things, downforce, brake balance the if we have the upgrades. Right now, I don't really have too much. I can change gearing, I can change tire PSI, but that's about it right now. I think the settings here are really good, and I also enjoy these settings because um, I feel like these settings do actually impact the performance of the car quite a bit. For me, coming from a more simulation-based uh, racing experience, that really makes me happy because I can tune my car to feel just how I want it to. I'll make changes to my anti-roll bar, I'll stiffen the rear, I'll soften the rear, and I really notice the difference in performance in the car. Um, that's really reassuring. I love to see that. It means that the physics is working and that all of these changes do matter. Last but not least, the fuel and tire strategy. Now, before every race, you're going to want to make sure that you edit this for the race that you're going to be doing. Make sure you take a look at how many laps are in the race and make sure you have enough fuel for the race. And make sure you have the right tires for the race too. Soft tires will only last you about 4 laps. Medium tires will last a little bit longer, probably a whole short race, so it'll probably last these full 6 laps, maybe start to feel a little bit troublesome in that last lap, and hard tires will last you much longer. But you will notice grip differences between these tires. Um, I love this strategy option here. I love to see, more strategy in my racing games. One thing I would love to see is maybe an improvement in terms of the longevity of how long the tires last, especially with the wet tires. I've had a few races so far where the wet tires just fall off incredibly quickly. They last maybe as long as the soft tires do, and that just doesn't really make sense to me. They should probably last about as long as the maybe medium tires in wet conditions, and if it's dry conditions, they last a little bit less. I don't know. That's just me personally. There are a lot of issues that I have with the wet weather physics in this game. I think they could have done a better job with the wet weather physics right now. When it's wet, you see the rain on the track, you see it on your screen, but it doesn't really impact you too much. You notice a loss of grip, but you can actually manage your car in wet conditions with slick tires. I actually have a race that I'm going to be highlighting here in the next coming days, a recording of a race in the GT series where I was on soft slick tires for the first half of a wet race, and I was maybe a couple seconds slower than I would be if I was on wet tires, but they lasted so much longer, it ended up being really beneficial. More to come with that. You'll see that video on my channel soon, but just a call out with wet weather physics here in the game. Well, before we lose time in practice, I think it's going to be a good idea to just go out and qualify. Getting into the car here. One issue I do have with the physics of this game, though, are the braking. I feel like it's just a little bit too sensitive. I feel like it's just a little bit too sensitive, and you lock up way, way, way too easy. You really have to be careful on the brakes. And I actually end up really just mashing the brakes in some situations because ABS is about the only way to stop your car nice and quick. Let's go slower into Eau Rouge this time. I did go off, and I do get a little bit of a violation there. There's a little penalty. Fair enough. In qualifying here, all of the other cars are ghosted, so I don't have to worry about running into anyone here, which is nice. In practice, you do have to worry about running into people, and obviously in the race you do as well. Talking about the penalty system as a whole here, I feel like it does a fairly good job with off-track penalties, maybe a little bit harsh in some circumstances, but honestly, I would rather have it maybe a little bit too harsh than a little too lenient. I think the penalty system is definitely too lenient with contact. I have had, and maybe lenient isn't the right word, but I've definitely had inconsistencies in the penalty system when it comes to car contact. I've had it where I've, definitely knocked somebody off track accidentally, and I get no penalty whatsoever. And I've had situations where I get hit in the back and I get a penalty. Just seems a little bit strange. Maybe just some tuning needs to happen with the penalty system. Probably that's the answer, is just a little bit of tuning. Ooh, car feels really light through some of these fast speed turns. But it'll be a scuffed lap, a dirty lap, but I think we will get it in here. You could really feel the tires losing grip and sliding through a lot of these turns once you upgrade, or sorry, not upgrade, but edit your force feedback. So coming from someone who races on a wheel, very important to update that force feedback. Now, here we are in the start screen for the race. This is where I'd really love to see maybe more information on the drivers themselves. Don't really have too much information right now on the drivers, which is a little bit disappointing. I'd love to see a little bit more. You can also update your race strategy here. Just making sure I have enough fuel for the race, make sure I have the right tires for the race, which I will here. One other thing I'd really like to see on this screen is a better indication or another indication on the conditions for the race. Because sometimes it's tough to tell if there is rain, because you won't see the rain falling. You might see it on the track, but it would be nice to have an indication of what the weather condition is going to be for the race on that intermission screen. But along with that, I'd love to maybe see a radar being added to the game as well to give an indication as to, what weather we can expect to come in during the race. Now, as you can see on my screen right now, I get a good indication of I get a semi-good indication of who's around me from the proximity arrows, but I really wish they could be a bit better, because I really have no idea how close these drivers are around me. And honestly, that guy that just turned into me, he probably had no idea I was really there either, because those indications I just feel like are really poor at conveying just how close other drivers are to me. Like, I know I have a driver on my right, or sorry, my left side right now, but I honestly couldn't tell you how close he is. And I can't see him in any mirrors or anything because for some reason my rear mirror doesn't work when I'm in this cockpit view. Guy comes in and just utterly obliterates everyone else there. I feel like overall the racing is fairly clean, but could be a little bit better. Again, I don't have any idea how good of a driver these guys are around. And right now, too, within the game, all of the penalties are given at the end of the race. I kind of wish they had something like GT7 where there was a slowdown zone. Ooh, and I'm going to go wide there. And I probably won't get a penalty for that just because I slowed down so much. So it does give you some leeway if you slow down, if you've made an off track and you try and just like recorrect it sort of on track, slowing down a little bit. That's another thing too that I've noticed is that I have custom settings for my mapping, but they reset every time I open up the game, which is kind of silly in my opinion. I'd love to see them just take my settings that I had when I closed the game last and just use those. Seems a little bit silly that they would reset that every single time. One thing I do want to talk about now that my tires have gone into the yellow, I do think the tire drop off overall is a little bit high. Because right now, my tires turned yellow at the start of this lap. I bet by the end of this lap, they're going to be already orange and they're going to really start to lose grip. I think they drop off a little bit too hard. As much as I love the strategy, and don't get me wrong, I love the strategy. And I love that it's very noticeable that you lose grip. I just think it's a little too extreme. Um, Even from me as a more veteran sim racer, I guess. Like you can see my front left has already completely gone off basically. It's in the orange. And now I'm just worried that I'm going to go wide every single time. They just really, 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 really start to lose their grip. And that affects braking, it affects turning. They're just incredibly slidey. Using the soft tires here and skip. I think they could maybe do better at the custom because right now I feel like there are not enough options in terms of how much fuel. I'd like a little bit more control over how much fuel I put in the car. Right now they just do percentages. Seems a little bit imprecise, especially for some shorter races where the tracks are tighter. And there we have it. Quick end of the race there. So like I said, the penalties are added at the end of the race. I kind of would like to see some of those penalties be addressed maybe at a pit stop or maybe during the race. That would be nice to see personally. I think it's fine though the way it is. Another thing I'd love to see at this screen or maybe on the screen prior is how much this affects my safety rating and how much this affects my driver rating. None of that is shown to me so far, so a little bit disappointing in that regard. Anyway, though, folks, that is all of my thoughts on Forza Motorsport 8. Um, I know it maybe sounded like I was overly harsh about the game, and I can kind of see where we might take it that way. But honestly, overall, I really love the feel of this game. I think the cars all feel really fun to drive. The tracks are all great. The new to Forza tracks are great, or exclusive to Forza tracks are great, I should say. Um, I've really been enjoying the game. There are some, again, notable things that I think the game needs to improve on, but this game technically hasn't even come out yet. We have a lot of room to grow. Again, you could argue that a lot of this stuff should be in the game at the start, or should work or be fixed or everything at the start of the game. But I think this is a really great place for the game to start growing. I think everything is here to make this game successful and really go toe to toe with Gran Turismo 7. And I really think that's what it needs to do to succeed. I think it's got all of that. And for me as a PC player, I think it's really, I'm really just happy to see that a game like this can come out and I can start playing it. I've been really having a lot of fun, you know, racing. The races have been tight. For the most part, they've been very clean. I'm, really excited to get more into this in the future. And I can promise you that more content will be coming out shortly. I've already got, like I said, a Road America video, GT series racing video in the works. I've already got a lot of plans to uh, make content for this game and hopefully help people learn how to tune their car, learn how to upgrade their car in the future. I think, like I mentioned, the base of this game I think is great. I'm really happy with how it's turned out. I think there's just some very nitty-gritty details here and there that I would love to see improved or fixed or added to really make this game shine like I know it can. Overall, I'm going to give it like an 8 out of 5, or sorry, 8 out of 10. Definitely room to improve that to a 9 or even maybe a little higher, like a 9.5. Um, don't know if this game will ever be perfect, but I'm really liking where it started. And I think for newcomers and for veteran racers, I think this is going to be a really great middle ground for both of us to maybe come together, bring new people into racing, as well as maintain the attention of the more serious sim racers, I should say. But anyway, that's all I have, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to my impressions, my review, going over the whole game of Forza Motorsport 8. I really appreciate you tuning in for this video. Apologies if it's maybe a little bit long, but if you like what I have to offer here, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out and it goes a long way. And leave a comment if you have any questions about how the game feels. I'll be happy to respond to any comments that you have. I'll be sure to comment to reply to all of the comments. But anyway, thank you again so much for tuning in. My name is Shim. Have a wonderful day. Peace.